little ones, the Sleep Manual Podcast. Welcome back to our podcast, The Sleep Manual, a podcast dedicated to your baby or toddler's sleep with new episodes out every week. I'm Nikki and I'm here with my Little Ones co-founder Amanda.
Hi.
We started Little Ones back in 2016 with the goal of helping families with their baby and toddler's sleep, and over the last 7 years we've helped more than 300,000 parents just like you. So if you need a hand with your baby's sleep, we would love you to visit us at littleones.co. Right, in today's episode, we are answering your sleep questions.
Yes, we are. We get asked questions about sleep non-stop. And so today we thought we'd grab some of our more common ones and give you guys some detailed answers. We do reply to your comments and messages on our social media platforms. So if you ever have any questions, please jump on there and ask. We'd love to help you. Right, let's dive in.
Right, question 1, Amanda.
Oh.
Should my 1-year-old still be having milk every 2 hours overnight?
No.
Stop it.
No, so at the age of 1, your 1-year-old does not need milk to get through the night. They don't physically need milk anymore overnight to sustain their calories, or they should be on a good few meals a day. And if you are giving your toddler at this age milk overnight, you'll find that this will actually affect your daytime solid feeding, and you'll probably find that your baby going into a toddler isn't eating that much, and it will be because of this. So make sure that you are weaning it down. But first of all, the easiest thing to do would be to check what they're doing nap-wise, because it could just be a simple switch around of their naps, or maybe just cutting down some daytime hours of sleep.
We probably should add there that just because your toddler is waking in the night, and this might have been something that they've always done or it's a new thing, it doesn't, just because your baby of any age is waking in the night, maybe with the exception of very new babies, it doesn't always mean that they're hungry. And I think this is really the answer to this question is perhaps you're probably giving your little one bottles because they're waking and you think that that's what they need. And like Amanda said, now the calories are around the wrong way, but they're probably not waking for milk necessarily.
Yeah, or they actually might eventually actually start waking for milk because they aren't eating enough during the day because they're having milk at night. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle. So so you do need to check what is happening during the day. Now, the first thing I would look at is their nap structure. This is possibly causing the waking at night. So have a look at what they're doing. If you need further information, make sure you check out our app. We go through exactly the perfect naps that baby of any age actually requires. So, and especially coming up to 1 through to 15 months, 18 months, there is a bit of a transition period there. So it is tricky on transitioning from those 2 down to 1 naps, and depending on the way that your naps are arranged too. So if your baby is having a longer nap in the morning and then only a short nap in the afternoon, it is a tricky period. But yeah, as I said, check that nap structure first, because it could just be an easy fix for you there, and let's hope it is. The next thing, Nikki, maybe you want to talk about if your baby actually can't self-settle, or if they're using the bottle to settle back to sleep, maybe.
So every 2 hours overnight.
Or maybe it's not even a bottle, is it? It could be just being fed.
Every 2 hours, a wake of every 2 hours overnight is straight away an indicator that your little one has a settling issue. Beyond being a very brand spanking new baby, there's no reason that your baby should be waking every 2 hours overnight unless they cannot self-settle. And particularly at this age, that becomes so important, because what's essentially happened is they don't know how to go to sleep without you feeding them. And so maybe like Amanda said, they are now genuinely hungry when they wake because their calorie intake is all happening overnight instead of during the day. But at some point, they started waking because they cannot settle themselves back to sleep, and 2 hourly wakes is in between every single sleep cycle. So you really need to, first of all, look at their daytime naps and make sure that their daytime naps aren't sabotaging the success of their night sleep. Then start trying to bump up their calories during the day. Then start looking at self-settling and getting them away from feeding to sleep and being able to fall asleep on their own.
Quite an easy way of weaning down some of the feeding overnight to ensure that your child will naturally start taking more calories during the day is if they are having a bottle, to reduce the feed by 30 mils or 1 ounce every 3 days. And this then gives your baby the chance to increase that food intake during the daytime instead of at nighttime. If you're breastfeeding, then you reduce the feed by 5 minutes every 3 days. So that is roughly about the same sort of milk intake. So making sure that they are actually taking their food calories during the day will help, obviously, that whole nighttime waking. But as Nikki said, nap structure, self-settling is the first things, the things that you also need to check. For sure.
All right, let's move to question 2. Question 2. My newborn is wide awake at night after a feed. Do you have any advice? Mm-hmm.
We have lots of advice, in fact. Yep.
Did I write this question?
So, newborn, this is a bit of an ambiguous question because a newborn we class as from anything from 0 through till 3 months old. However, as we know, babies change dramatically through that first 3 months. So if you are looking for advice on awake times and nap lengths during the day, you need to look at the individual week that your baby is, because what works for a 3-week-old or a 2-week-old might 100% will not work for a 10-week-old.
9-week-old, yeah.
A 9-week-old. So those awake times and nap lengths are just so important to make sure that you have them right, because otherwise they will be awake at nighttime.
So what Amanda's saying is that if your little one is staying awake at night for a prolonged period of time, it is because there's something wrong with their daytime nap structure. They haven't been awake for long enough during the day, and they've got to reclaim some of those awake hours, and it's happening in the night, which is not very convenient for a tired parent.
No, or the opposite could be that they've actually been awake way too long during the day, and whether this is in between naps or just total awake time is too long during the day, and that has made them then overtired. And this won't necessarily mean that they will be awake for long periods, but they certainly will be awake. They'll be wakeful.
Probably grumpy and unsettled in that instance. Grumpy. Whereas an undertired baby who hasn't had enough awake time will probably be awake but relatively happy. They're not going to be awake and grumpy. Another thing that I think parents of newborns, especially if it's your first child, that they just don't even think about is, and I was guilty of this, is during the night when you're up tending to your baby, keep the lights off. Yeah. You know, if you're turning on the lights, even if you've got a night light in their room or a lamp, because that's what Pinterest told you should have in your beautiful nursery, and you're turning that on in the night, like, it's bright, it's stimulating your little one, it's saying to their very immature body clock, hey, the light is on, so it's daytime, so it's time to be awake, it's not sleep time. And then you're wrestling with their body clock to try and get them back to sleep. So keep everything dark, like, use as little amount of light as you possibly can.
This actually happened to me last night. It did. It 100% happened to me.
7-year-old newborn baby?
with my 7-year-old who was throwing up every hour overnight. So at one of the times that she woke up, I went downstairs because she at that point needed something to drink as well. I went downstairs, but to find the drink, I had to turn on one of the lights in the kitchen. So I turned on the light and I filled up her drink, did some things. And I'm obviously also talking to her as well. She's very sick, so she's going back to sleep straight away. But I went back into my bed, and of course, of all the times that she was up in the night, that was the one that was the longest for me to get back to sleep. Yeah, so it is a cue to wake up, and your brain will stay awake.
With the light, yeah.
With the light and talking as well, and food as well. So any of those three things you don't want to do.
So if your little one, especially, at any age, to be honest, if they're awake in the night, keep the lights off. Keep the lights off and have a look at what's happening in their day.
Yeah.
Oh, this links into our next question, Amanda. Question 3. What age do you recommend making babies' rooms dark?
All ages.
We talk about, at every age, we talk about the dark so much. Like, we've broken records about, because I'll tell you why, because it's so effective, but it's so easy. Like, it's such it's not like you're teaching sleep training to a 3-year-old, which is like hard and devastating, and it's long and it takes ages. The dark is something you can do like right now, and it will only ever improve your little one's sleep. So we talk about it a lot. We're a little bit obsessed.
If you think about it though, like humans, when we were cave people, we didn't sleep out. Cave dwellers. We slept in the cave. There were no external lights. It wasn't a thing. Our body clocks are just designed to be dark at night, to sleep in the dark. It is just so important. So
it's just how it is.
It is how it is. So if you aren't going to sleep your newborn baby in the complete darkness for naps and night sleep, then we at least recommend that you start from 8 weeks old, because otherwise you will 100% notice that your naps become shorter during the day, and they will start catnapping even more so than what potentially will happen through the 4-month sleep progression. So the dark is super important, and the reason it is from 8 weeks old is because the maternal melatonin, which your baby had got from their mother, has worn off at this point. The 8-week age, it's completely worn off. They need to produce melatonin themselves now, and they can only do that in the dark. So,
and I'll tell you this, your baby started sleeping themselves in the dark in the womb.
Yeah.
Your baby was like
100% of the time they were even awake. Yeah.
So it's never too early to use a very dark room for your little one sleeps.
Let's move on to question number 4.
I'd love to,
Amanda. So how do you settle your baby to sleep without feeding? This is a good one. You can answer this one, Nikki.
You just don't feed them to sleep. Just take it away. No.
Oh, we sound so ruthless.
I know. We're not. We're nice people. So the very first thing we would always say, if feeding your baby to sleep is very easy, and it's a pretty natural thing to do, especially when they're little and they can only stay awake for such a short period of time, and they're going to fall asleep when you're doing anything, really. And feeding takes ages, and they get exhausted from it, and it is quite hard to avoid. But the older your
unless
baby
you have
gets,
a baby with reflux, and then they 100% never go to sleep feeding because they just physically can't.
Yeah. But the older your baby gets, the older your non-reflux baby gets, the more this can become a really severe sleep association, and they're like addicted to it. So they will only be able to fall asleep if you are feeding them. So we do get asked this a lot. How do you get them to sleep if you're trying to move away from feeding them to sleep? And again, the very first place we would start, it would be making sure that they are perfectly ready for sleep. Because feeding your baby to sleep is an easy way to get them to sleep almost at any point They might not even be completely ready for sleep yet, but they'll probably fall asleep because it's a soothing, sleep-inducing act. So perfectly ready for sleep means they've been awake for the right amount of time. It means they haven't already overslept that day. So it might mean capping their naps. It means making sure that if they're young, that they're swaddled, and that they are in a very dark room. They have loud white noise. So that's the very first place to start with, perfectly ready for sleep. Set everything up to be perfect for sleep. Then, depending on the age of your baby, so if we're talking about a younger baby, there are many ways that you can settle them to sleep without feeding. In fact, we would always suggest just chucking them in their bed and seeing if they'll go to sleep. They might, if they're that ready for
Not
sleep.
Not literally chucking.
Right. No, gently and lovingly placing them in their bed, and they might just go to sleep. Alternatively, we have a really great settling method, which is called side settling. We have videos on our social channels and our app on our YouTube of how to do this. Essentially, you hold your baby in their bed on their side and you rhythmically pat their bottom pretty fast, and you got the loud white noise playing, specifically our shh sleep track, which is available on all streaming platforms, and they go to sleep. And in this way,
This works really well if you're trying to work away from feeding to sleep for any baby under around 4 months old. Over this, they become a little bit more sort of nosy and a bit harder. So there are other methods.
But I mean, essentially, you're also teaching them by using this method that their bed is the place in which they fall asleep, not on you, not while they're feeding, but you're still responding to them in a very hands-on way. You're still soothing them. If you've got a baby older than 4 months, it does get a little bit more complicated because those sleep associations are pretty ingrained. To be fair, I don't think we have time to go through all of our methods here and now, but if you do have a baby in that age bracket, definitely have a look on our app because we have millions of methods, because it's all dependent on your baby's age and their sleep association and their temperament and your parenting style. Yeah. But it can be done. It definitely can be done. So if your baby is feeding to sleep and it's something you want to move away from, yes, we can help you. Right, Amanda, question number 5.
Oh, this is a good
interesting one. Why does my baby nap for longer when they're napping on me? Because they're trying to prevent you from having a shower.
Yeah, so there's a couple of reasons why this might be happening. So the first would be that they aren't actually ready for sleep in the first place. As Nikki just talked about before in the previous question, that, you're doing something. Generally, when they're napping on you, you are actually physically doing something first of all to get them to go to sleep. So you might be jiggling, or you might be like bum patting them, or you might be rocking them,
or have been feeding them.
Yeah, so all of those things are actually settling your baby to sleep first, and then they're staying on you, obviously. So when they're staying on you, what is happening is they're using you as that sleep association. You were there holding them, settling them. When they wake in their sleep cycle, you're still there, and they're obviously going back to sleep. Yeah. So, but first of all, those awake times, check that your nap lengths and everything is right, because it could be a bit of a tweak there that you actually need to just cut down some wake time, or maybe add some sleep during the day. So that could be why they're going to sleep and staying asleep on you for the first part. The next part, which is a common one, is wind. Sleeping upright helps wind. Definitely not as comfortable lying on your back in a safe sleep position when you've got wind. Even, if you think about yourself, if you've got a really crampy tummy, then you're going to roll on your side and sort of curl up in a ball. So
One word. Bread.
Bread.
3 words, too much bread. And that's how the baby feels.
Yeah. So too much bread for Nikki.
But it's just so good.
I know, it is good. Okay, so being upright helps. It also helps babies with reflux. So babies with reflux will enjoy sleeping upright and sleeping on you, especially because you're comforting. This is you're there, your heartbeat's there, all of those things are fantastic and great, but it might not be sustainable, for sure.
So linked to your baby sleeping upright is also that when they are sleeping on you like that, there is a pressure on their tummy. It's kind of like a weighted blanket, how that activates our parasympathetic nervous system and it calms you down. So when your baby is sleeping on you, it's usually on their tummy. And so that can be, for some babies, a more comfortable way to sleep. Obviously, it's not safe for them to sleep in their beds on their tummies, but what we can do is sort of replicate that feeling by using a nice tight swaddle, because that's essentially what a swaddle does. It's the same as what a weighted blanket does in an older child or an adult, and it's like giving them a hug. It puts pressure on like all of their body, which actually initiates a calming response. So we can actually replicate this entire situation by using a swaddle so that they get that nice pressure on their tummy, that nice huggy feeling. Obviously they're sleeping on their backs in their beds because it's safe, but we can also use white noise to help replicate, like Amanda was talking about, your heartbeat or your breathing and those kind of relaxing, comforting sounds as well. So if you want your little one to stop napping on you for some of their naps or for quite so long, or encourage them to nap for longer in their own bed, definitely these steps should yield some success.
Yep. All right, let's move on to question number 6. Nikki, how long should my 3-month-old baby stay awake for? This is a super common question because we've gone from newborn, all of a sudden they're not a newborn anymore, and we as parents, especially first-time parents, sort of all of a sudden, holy moly,
what's my baby
sleeping
doing?
Newborn?
Because what people, and I was 100% guilty of this, and we've also talked about this quite a bit, is people just get stuck in this pattern of, this is my baby's current sleep thing and it's working, so I'm not going to change it. And, it might have been working for you when they were 6, 7, 8 weeks old, however long you were giving them as an awake time, what their nap times were, and then suddenly you're a month, 6 weeks down the track and their sleep is regressing. And it is a tricky age for sleep at this age. 3-4 months starts to get a bit gnarly. But we also need to be staying on top of their changing sleep needs, which are they change week on week at this kind of age. Yeah. So for your 3-month-old baby, we are looking at generally around 2 hours of awake time between naps, and that includes feeds, it includes diaper changes, it includes tummy time and all of the things you want to do with them when they're awake. So we would generally say, well, to be honest, at this age, it's kind of 2 hours is the minimum, really. You definitely don't want more than 2 hours 15-ish, because then they're starting to get overtired. But I'll tell you this, much less than 2 hours is going to mean that they are more difficult to settle to sleep because they're not ready, and they're potentially only catnapping and maybe waking more overnight.
Yeah, or maybe you haven't realised that they are actually waking overnight because they seem like they need to go to sleep after an hour and a half during the day, and then you haven't sort of linked that this is actually, they're super tired during the day because they're awake heaps at night, so we need to remember that sleep and the total sleep is actually in a 24-hour period, and we count sort of 12 hours of that overnight, so we need to look at through the day, breaking that up. So we've got those 2-hour naps, 2-hour naps, wouldn't that be nice? 2 hours between naps, but you need to also look at your total day sleep and look at how much they're sleeping, that they're not sleeping for 8 hours during the day cumulatively. You need to make sure that that is correct as well to ensure that they'll sleep really well at nighttime. All right. Question 7.
Oh, 7. Why is my 4-month-old only napping for 30 minutes? Dun, dun, dun.
Well, the answer is in the 4-month-old.
Wow. Yeah. How long have you got?
You've got a 4-month-old. Now, we have an entire podcast on the 4-month sleep regression. So if you want to check that one out, go back a few episodes because we do an entire podcast on it and it is great information.
So let's not go into like infinite detail right now because we've already done that.
No, that's
go
right.
listen to that
podcast. Check out that one. So the first thing is, this is where, well, it's just super quick. It is where your baby's sleep cycles have matured forever now. They've changed from that sleepy newborn to now an adult sleep cycle like we have. So they are waking in between their sleep cycles during the day, which is around 35 to 45 minutes, and 2 hourly at night. They're waking in between their sleep cycles. They need to know how to go back to sleep in their sleep cycles. However, how you've put them to sleep in the first place at the beginning of their naps or at night, their night sleep, how they've been going to sleep, that is how they've learned how to go to sleep. So if they are being fed or rocked or whatever, or dummy, to go to sleep at the beginning of their sleep, that's what they want to resettle in between these sleep cycles. So this is why your baby is probably waking after 30 minutes, because they are not resettling into that sleep cycle. They don't know how to go back to sleep and to nap for longer. And annoyingly, 30 minutes is actually an awful time because they've woken in their deep part of their sleep. And this is also a sign that they're getting super overtired. So try not to continue this because it is not good for anybody. No.
So teaching your little one to self-set, to go to sleep by themselves, like use their own sleep skills at this age, is the best solution to this problem. But hand in hand with that is, as we've talked about, making sure that they are perfectly ready for sleep. Because even if your little one can self-settle, they're not going to nap for longer than 30 minutes if they don't need to. So give them that decent amount of awake time, but make sure they're not overtired. And also, again, chuck on some white noise, make the room really dark. All of this stuff is only going to help them in this situation. It's never going to make their sleep worse.
And if you've got a dummy,
go listen to that. Godspeed.
Godspeed. If you've got a dummy, we might be able to explain what's happening in question number 8.
Question number 8. Oh, yes, I see. I was going to say, just if you've got a 4-month-old, regardless of what their sleep issue is, go and listen to our 4-month regression podcast because we cover every possible scenario in there. If you've got a 3 to 6 month old baby, to be honest. To be fair, I think 4-month sleep regression.
My children both started the 4-month sleep regression at around 11, 9, 10, 11 weeks. It's just all merged into one. So, go listen to that podcast. All right, moving on to question number 8. Should I use a pacifier or dummy for my baby? Yes or no? Or is it yes and
yes
no?
Yes and no. It's yes and no.
Yes and
dun,
no.
Dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. So this is...
can be... they can be a blessing and a curse. It's so age dependent. So there are definitely some ages where pacifiers are freaking fantastic. Like very young babies.
And both Nikki and I used a pacifier for one of our children.
Not ourselves.
Each. Not ourselves.
We didn't use it ourselves. And I used a pacifier.
Imagine. So we do know what happens, but I'll go through later on how I used my pacifier with my oldest, because there is a tricky period where pacifiers aren't your friend.
So they're, like I said, they're very good for newborn babies to help settle them because the sucking reflex is very strong. However, as we were just explaining about the 4-month sleep regression, it can wreak havoc because if your little one is used to falling asleep with a pacifier, that's the only way they know to go to sleep. They do not have the physical capability yet to replace the pacifier in their own mouth themselves. So it's falling out when they're in deep sleep. it's lost forever.
Yeah.
They cannot put it back in. They call out to you. You have to get up 50,000 times a night simply to replace the pacifier. This is where we would say get rid of it. Get rid of it before it's a problem. So before they're coming through this regression period. Then, however, once they sort of pop out the other side, around 7-8 months old, they do start to have that physical ability to put the pacifier back in themselves. And you can very easily teach them to do this themselves. And then you're away laughing, because then it's a great sleep tool once again, once they know how to replace it. Just make sure you have about 25 pacifiers in their crib so they can always find one at any given moment.
Or use one of those cuddlies that attaches a few pacifiers so they can reach for that cuddly.
Different kinds.
All different kinds,
where they sort of Velcro onto the cuddly. So it's easier to find.
The way that I used my pacifier for my oldest child, who had severe reflux and everything, so a pacifier was fantastic for her. As a newborn, it stopped the crying the majority of the time. And so when we hit the 4-month regression, though, and she started waking because of the pacifier falling out of her mouth and not being able to put it back in, what I did at that point is I changed the way that we used the pacifier. Instead of putting her to sleep with the pacifier at the beginning of her naps, I gave her the chance to self-settle first. And if there was something extremely wrong and she wasn't going to sleep, then I would pop the pacifier in, but that would happen very rarely. So she was able to self-settle, and then if for some reason she wouldn't resettle in between her naps, I would quickly go and pop the pacifier in, and she would resettle really easily. So between that 4 and 7, 8 months old age bracket, she was self-settling, but just using the pacifier when needed. And then from 8 months old, I taught her how to put it in herself, and then we are stuck with it. So you're stuck with it now until at least 3 years old. Do not try to get rid of the pacifier until you are prepared for no more naps ever again, because this will 100% get rid of your naps if you get rid of the pacifier. And so you're keeping it until they've dropped all naps during the day, and just after they drop that nap during the day is a perfect time to actually get rid of it. Hopefully you've talked about the pacifier theory, and you've actually planted a seed that if your child gives up the pacifier, they can get some sort of reward. And this only also is able to be, like, they're only really able to understand this sort of reward situation after about 3 years old as well. The concept of it. Otherwise, prior to this, they just don't understand it. So after 3 years old, right when they've dropped that daytime nap, hopefully that's exactly when you want to get rid of the pacifier. And I can tell you what, getting rid of a pacifier was much easier than getting rid of a thumb.
Oh, don't even. Because mine still sucks her thumb. She's 8 in a couple of weeks. You can't throw the thumb away.
You can't throw the thumb away, and dentists out there will be screaming and yelling at us. But I can tell you what, getting rid of a pacifier at 3 years old, their mouth does reshape, their roof of their mouth does come down, and their tongue goes into all the right places and all of those things. And their teeth, their jaw widens because their tongue is pushing on their mouth because they don't have a pacifier. And it is much easier to do this at around 3 than trying to get rid of a thumb, for sure. So I think we've covered pacifiers. Shall we move on to question?
Right.
Yeah.
9. My baby is 6 months. No, my baby's nearly 8. My baby is 6 months and started waking 45 minutes after going to bed at night. Why?
Your 6-month-old baby.
Yeah. The old 45-minute wake.
The 45-minute wake. Now,
that one.
This is likely due to needing to drop a nap at this age because they are going through a bit of a transition here. They may still be on, if they are still on 3 naps a day, this will be 100% the reason why they are waking after 45 minutes, because they are treating bedtime as another nap. They're not tired enough to go to sleep for the night. So again, check out that daytime nap structure, check out what's going. Now, there are a couple of other reasons in here why your baby might be waking after 45 minutes. And this goes for any age, actually, not just 6-month-old. But for mine, it was always when they were getting sick. So it might have been like maybe 2 or 3 days before I even saw that they were really sick, or before they got a fever or a runny nose or whatever. But my children would always wake after 45 minutes, and that would be my first clue as to something is going wrong. And I would always look back on the past sort of few days and go, is there something going on? Has this happened more than 1 or 2 nights in a row? What might be going on? So that's sort of why I think they're waking after 45 minutes. Nikki, do you have any other reasons why they might be?
It could also be linked back into the nap structure. Even if they've dropped that third nap, it could be to do with the timing and length of their other 2 naps. So at this age, what you would be aiming for is a short morning sleep and quite a long lunchtime sleep. And then sort of awake by about 2:30, 3 o'clock, and aiming for a 6:30, 7 o'clock bedtime. If they've dropped down to 2 naps, but the second nap of the day is quite late, or for quite a long time later in the day, and they're only having, say, 2 hours until bedtime, that will be why. So it's not only a case of dropping down to 2 naps a day, but you also need to make sure that they're happening at the right times. Because again, they're not going to be tired enough to stay asleep for bedtime.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. Last question. My 2-year-old is taking forever to go to bed at night when she was previously a really good sleeper. Help. Send help.
Send help, all right. 2-year-old. Yeah. Well, okay. So the first thing, have a look at their naps. We basically harp on about the same thing. Naps. So it's possibly
it's the solution for everything.
Yeah, it really is.
Why do people not understand this?
I know.
So easy.
Shorten your child's nap. If they're still sleeping 2.5 hours, have a look at that and cut it down, and hopefully that will help.
Make sure it's not too late in the day or too early in the day.
Yeah,
it needs to be across that middle of the day, like right in the middle of the day. Give them a nap there, but not for too long.
Yeah, not for too long. So shorten your nap, and that will hopefully help. No screens before bed, obviously. You know,
yeah, well, that's not that obvious. Some people sort of at this age, the 2-year-olds like to watch Coco Melon.
Oh, God.
Remember Coco
And to be fair, it's not all children that actually, like, my kids can actually watch TV right before they go to bed. But, it will definitely affect your 2-year-old and be stimulating them, and it will affect their ability to fall asleep.
And I mean, even things like no sugary food or drinks before bed. Like, they don't need an orange juice before bed or a hot chocolate. And, like, just have a think about what's going into their body, because at this age, they are so... Sugar is like speed to them at this age, or like caffeine. No caffeinated beverages. They don't need a Coke, like a soda. They don't need anything that's got sugar or caffeine before bed. And I think as toddlers, sometimes we start to get into the habit of, we'll give them dessert, or they can have a juice because they're not a baby. But it's that stuff is so critical. It's definitely making them wired. They're going to be bouncing off the walls. That is why they're not sleeping. So make
also
sure
check what time you're giving them dinner as well, because their body does need time to actually process and digest their food, and especially if you are giving them dessert and custard or whatever, check that's not too close to going to sleep, because I know it's pretty hard to go to sleep on a really full tummy. So have a look at the time that you're going to sleep.
So if you've got all this stuff spot on and checked it all off, and your 2-year-old is still fluffing around at bedtime, I'm sorry, but they are just fluffing around at this point, and they're doing it because they get a reaction, and that's what they want.
Massive behavioural things that will be going on with a 2-year-old. They've started to realize they've got a bit of sway with you, that they can pull on your heartstrings, they can ask you for milk because they know that will give them an extra 5 minutes of being awake, So if you do need to break any of these behavioral habits, then there is a couple of things you can do. You can do check-ins, which is where I used this strategy like when my children now are fluffing around. I'll put them in bed, and then I'll say, I need to go to the toilet. I'll come back and check on you in 5 minutes or 2 minutes or however long it is you think that your child will be able to handle. Now, hopefully they're still in a crib or a cot at this age, being 2 years old.
Keep them there.
If they aren't, Godspeed.
Yeah.
Because at least in a crib, they're confined, they can't get out. Whereas a 2-year-old will get out. They just will.
Yeah.
So,
because they can.
So you start doing check-ins, tell them that you'll go and check on them in 5 minutes. Now you need to go and wash your hands. And you just make up every excuse under the sun. You say that you need to get a drink or whatever. You will come back and you will check on them, but extend that time every time you go in. Say that you're going for a little bit longer so that they get bored waiting for you, and they will eventually go to sleep. Now, once you get to the morning, you make out that they have cured cancer with how amazing it was that they went to sleep when you came and checked on them. So it also gives them the confidence that you actually did come back and check as well.
You didn't desert them. So this is a good strategy. If your little one's fluffing at bedtime is purely behavioural or habit, we've got to break it. This is a really good way to do that. And this also works if your child is older and getting out of bed, because it encourages them to actually stay in their bed and wait for you.
Yeah.
All right. I feel like that's all the questions we have today, Amanda. We've actually covered quite a lot in there.
Yeah, we have.
Thank you so much to everyone for listening. Hopefully that's been helpful for some or all of you. Please check out other podcasts. We have a lot more sleep advice, literally every sleep topic under the sun. And if you're in need of further help, please visit us at littlenones.co or download our app from your app stores, because we can guide you through any sleep challenge you're facing from there, and we would love to do so. Thank you again for joining us today, and we will talk to you in the next episode. This is Little Ones, the Sleep Manual Podcast.